Hi, this is Mike from Mike's Unboxing Reviews on How To, and today we're going to take a close look at an updated classic, the Sharkoon TG5 Pro. Keep watching to find out more. Okay, so in today's video we're going to take a look at the updated classic, that is, the Sharkoon TG5 Pro. Now this is an updated model. Originally this was released as a TG5 back in about 3 years ago, I think it was now, and then they updated that a little bit later with a RGB version based on 12 volt RGB. But now, in 2020, they've re-released it again using pretty much similar designs, but they've made a few little tweaks, but more importantly, they've added in 5 volt addressable RGB. And also, you get 4 of those fans included straight out of the box. This case at the moment in the UK retails for around about £75, which puts it around about £10 to £15 dearer than the TG5 was available when it first was released. Although, obviously, COVID times and price increases take that into consideration, and also it was 3 years ago, so things have definitely moved on a little bit. So what do we get for our money? Well, in this particular case, you get a really sleek design, in my opinion. I really do like this kind of design. It's very angular, there's lots of straight lines. It looks the real deal. And actually, I think it belies its price point. This, in my opinion, does look a more expensive case. You do get 2 lots of tempered glass, one on the front and one here on the side, which gives it a little bit more style, in my opinion. A lot of people would probably like to see this with a full mesh front, and to be honest with you, I am one of those. I would prefer to see mesh front, but purely for looks, I think the glass front looks very, very stylish, although obviously a mesh front would increase the airflow. Now this thing has an absolute ton of storage room inside it. There's room for up to 3 3.5 inch drives, 4 2.5 inch drives, and various combinations thereof. From the factory though, we're limited to only 5 drives, but there are options to add more cages if you want to add more SSDs. Cooling wise, you can put an air cooler in there of up to 167mm tall, and graphics card, you can put a whopping 400mm card in there. Although, if you do decide to put a 360mm radiator in the front, and yes, you can put a 360mm radiator in the front, you will lose some of that space, which will limit you down to about a 360mm graphics card. Motherboard wise, we're catering for ATX boards, and actually it comes pre-configured with all of the mounting hardware in the ATX configuration. You can, if you wanted to, put a micro ATX, or if you're mad enough, put an ITX board in here. But personally, I think like most of these type of MIDI tower cases, an ATX board is what really does it justice. And being that you've got a lot of tempered glass and you can see inside, you really want to fill up that space as much as possible. Currently, as I've got it configured, I've just got a power supply in there, just so you can see the lighting. And the fans themselves are powered currently from molex connectors. Yeah, I know, molex connectors. But the fans do work with 3-pin DC control from a PWM header, or molex if you wanted to. The fans themselves run at 1200 RPM, and at the moment they're running at full blast, and actually it's not too loud, and my lav mic is on, and I'm probably less than a foot away from it, and it doesn't seem to be causing any real distractions. So let's power it down and take a good look inside. Okay, so let's start off with the side panel. So the side panel, as you can see, is a tempered glass panel and is a very, very minimal smoke tint. The glass itself is held on in a slightly better way than the previous version, the TG5, which had a kind of weird plastic frame which had a tendency to become unglued. This one is a metal frame and also is held on the rear with 2 thumb screws rather than the traditional 4 mounting points as it was previously. The frame for the tempered glass is metal all the way around and also has some lugs at the bottom edge which rest onto the bottom of the frame to keep it all nicely in place. And again, very strong. The metal frame is excellent and certainly is a worthwhile upgrade. So looking inside, I can see already there's a couple of potential issues already that maybe would put off some people. One of which is in the bottom corner, there isn't a cutout for the HD audio cables to go through, so you're going to have to route it along the bottom, which is a little bit of a pain, but not a deal breaker. What may be a deal breaker though is the mounting on the top of the chassis. So on the top you've got room for 3 120mm fans, 2 140mm fans, combination of radiators, etc. therein. You cannot fit anything larger than a radiator of 240mm, and also looking at the space you may want to go with something which is of a narrow type and with narrow fans. There isn't a massive gap between the top of the motherboard and this top section, so ideally I think fans would be a better option in the top section. If you want to put a radiator in, you can do. Radiator at the front, 360mm, 280, 240, etc, etc. It's actually on a really nice mounting system, which we'll take a look at in a little bit when we take the frame off. But other than that, inside pretty much a standard affair. Got plenty of wiring options here, lots of punch outs, cutouts, etc. Looks to be the real deal. Storage wise, we've got these removable trays on the front, which are just held in with thumb screws, so you can put 2 drives in this basement area, and these drive bays actually fit on the back, which we'll show you in a little while. And yeah, I think you've got quite a lot of flexibility there, plenty of options. Mounting depth for a radiator on the front, looking around about 55mm, so not a massive amount of room there, but certainly it is going to be possible. The power supply basement is a little bit more than what we're used to seeing these days, either being kind of completely flat or almost non-existent. This one's actually quite nice. You've got some logos on the front there, so the Sharkoon logo. You've also got some cutouts here and here, just to let some of the heat escape, although it is a relatively open design inside, so I don't think heat generation or heat buildup is going to be a problem. Moving around to the rear of the case, we've got pretty much standard ATX layout here. So you've got your IO shield area, 120mm fan pre-installed. No adjustment on this whatsoever, so it is what it is. 120mm is all you're going to get in there, and it is a fixed position, no vertical adjustment whatsoever. Got the compression fitting on the side for your PCI Express cards, and nice to see you've got the 7 blanking plates here, all of which are reusable, which is really nice to see. Moving down, we've got our power supply section in the basement area, and this will fit up to a 210mm power supply. You will need to remove the drive cage for that. If you're leaving the drive cage in situ, then you're limited to a maximum of 150mm for your power supply. Moving around to the back side, we've got thumb screws again holding on the back panel, and there is a grab handle to make it easier to remove. The back panel itself is pretty rigid, not too bad, and is steel construction. So this is where potentially things can get a little bit messy. Obviously, we have got 4 fans included in here. They are RGB and they do have their own power connections, but fortunately there is quite a decent recess of about 28mm in this, so you can hide cables pretty easily. You've got punch outs in the top for fan mountings, etc., and also there's a square mounting there for running additional cables through for the RGB addressable fan. Punch outs, there's quite a few dotted around for making cable management nice and easy. And as you can see, this basement area at the moment is pretty chock-a-block. So with a little bit of TV magic, we've cleaned things up a little bit so you can see better what is going on here. So in the top left-hand corner, we've got the Addressable RGB controller. Now this can be controlled in various ways, so you can control it with the reset button, which is connected on the top, and that connects on the side. Or alternatively, there is another set of cables here, one for the SATA, which powers the RGB, and one is for your 5V addressable RGB, so your standard 4-pin, and also you've got your voltage, data and ground cable, which is used on some of the older Gigabyte boards. So you can choose to use that connector if you want to, if you've got an RGB board. If you haven't, then you can just plug it in on the SATA power and control it from the front, which is nice and easy to do. There are 4 fans included straight out of the box, and that still gives you an additional 4 headers on the controller to add 4 additional devices. So ideally, I would say an RGB strip and possibly 3 120mm fans in the top, and you're good to go. So moving down to the connectors for the fans, we've got a selection of molex. So if you've got a motherboard which doesn't have a lot of fan connectors, then you can go ahead and use molex. Again, like I said, they do run at 1200 RPM, which isn't particularly noisy and is completely bearable. They do have the 3-pin DC connections as well. So if you want to remove some of that clutter, you can just snip off the molex wires and forget they ever existed. So moving down to the basement area, we've got a really interesting section here for mounting hard drives, etc. So you've got these nice sleds, and actually one of the sleds comes with the accessory pack, which we'll take a quick look at. So usual kind of deal here, got a couple of Velcro straps, a spare PCI blanking plate. Not too sure why that is in there, but always nice to see. And you get your mounting hardware, drive mountings, etc, etc. Also, a nice little addition is a little thumb screw type device which goes over the motherboard pillars, so you can tighten them up by hand. I actually find that to be really good, and that is going to be a definite accessory in my little kit over there. So going back to the hard drive cage, again, these are removable sleds, nice and easy to do, so you can put 2.5-inch drive on the mountings there, or you can put a 3.5-inch drive actually in the sled itself. You can, if you want to, you can remove this cage in its entirety. Also, on the base of the case, which is hard for me to say, there is 6 rubber grommets. So if you want to mount a 3.5-inch hard drive directly to the bottom of the cage and remove this entirely, you can do. So that'll give you tons and tons of room for cable management. Maybe if you're using cable extensions, colored cable extensions, that kind of thing, you've got all that extra cable work, you can still put it in there and still have a 3.5-inch drive, even if you do sacrifice the caddy. The caddy itself also does have an option, so you can mount a fan in it if you wanted to. So if you put a single 3.5-inch drive in there, you can still mount a smallish 60mm fan in there just to keep the hard drive cool. All of this channel here is recessed a little bit further than the rest of the motherboard backplate, and also there's this really nice mounting area here for putting all your cables through, and no sharp edges whatsoever. Again, tons of tie down points, so no issues there. The power supply is in this section here. There is a pretty poor filter on there. It's just one of those really flat, I don't even know how to describe it. It's basically, it's a piece of mesh which slides into place. There's no plastic rails around it. It's not easily to remove. So that is a little bit of a downside. But the power supply itself is mounted on these really nicely thick rubber pads or foam pads. So if you've got a power supply which is slightly larger or larger fans, any of the vibrations will be soaked up by those pads. Looking at the I/O section, you've got pretty much standard deal. So you've got your section here for reset, power, hard drive LED, all that kind of stuff. You've also got USB 3.0, and also you've got your USB 2.0 and also your HD audio. So time to explore the front now. So on this front panel, in tempered glass front panel, which weirdly, I'm not entirely sure why, it's got a slight orange tint to it, which for an RGB case doesn't make a total amount of sense. If I'm completely honest, this is the one part of the case which I feel lets it down slightly. I would have much preferred to see the glass being crystal clear, or maybe a very smoke tint. Having an orange hue to your lighting isn't always the best, but as you can possibly see from the B-roll that we've shot, with the lights going, when you look at it, it's very difficult to tell under most lighting conditions that this is actually orange when it's on. So yeah, not the end of the world, but again, just one of those weird inclusions that I'm not entirely sure what purpose it serves. The front panel itself comes off quite easily and is not captive, and if you take it off then you can see that slightly orange hue to it. Hopefully that's coming through on the camera. Again, slightly weird inclusion, but it is what it is. I am actually tempted to remove that glass in its entirety and put some mesh in there. I think that would be a much better airflow situation, or maybe just replace it with some plain glass. Ventilation is catered for on the side, so we've got a really nice big ventilation area, and also there are filters in there which are removable, which just pull out and they can be cleaned and reused. It's a very fine mesh on there, so very little air restriction on there. It's not the best setup, obviously, because we've got the filtration and the ventilation 90 degrees to the fans. You are going to have some restrictions on air. That is inevitable, but if you've got a solid front panel, there's not really a great deal you can do about that. But on the plus side, it does make things look very nice. And with these 3 fans in here, so you've got these nice, pretty much crystal clear fans with the kind of milky blades. The RGB shines through really nice again, as you've probably seen from some of the B-roll that's been flashing up. They do look absolutely fantastic. And also this entire section is nice and easy to manage. There are 6 screws, 2 at the top, 2 in the middle, and 2 at the bottom. Remove those 6 and then this whole section can be removed. Again, as you'll see from some of the B-roll. So if you wanted to mount a radiator in there, you can do quite easily. My personal opinion on this, and I have actually tried this off camera, is to actually mount these fans on the back of this mounting area. With the fans slightly recessed into the case, it actually does make an incredible difference in airflow, as we'll find in some of the testing which we'll do in a follow-up video to this once we get a system installed on it. But even just from my initial findings, using the fans at their highest rating on the 12-volt molex, I did find by removing the front panel, there was a drastic increase in airflow, but by moving the fans back about 10mm, 15mm onto the back of that mounting area, the airflow was increased dramatically again. So they didn't look as nice because the frame covers up some of this RGB goodness, but then that is part and parcel of what we do as PC builders. You modify things to make them either perform better or look better, and you take your choice either way. It's nice to see that the I/O section at the top is actually hardwired in, so when you do remove this front panel, you don't have any wires attached to it, which is a nice feature. So moving to the top section, and as you can see, we've got this nice removable mesh filter, which will be nice and easy to keep clean, or if you want to, just leave it off entirely to let some of that hot air escape. And you've got tons of mounting options on here. Again, 3 120mm fans on here, 2 140mm fans, or combinations thereof. 240 radiator is the most I would recommend in this. You may be able to squeeze in slightly larger depending on your degree of dexterity and also the flexibility of what motherboard you install. As you can possibly see, this is offset, but not enough really to clear some of those larger RAM heatsinks and possibly VRM heatsinks. Again, that's something we'll definitely take a look at in a follow-up video. And taking another quick look at the basement section. So as you can see, you've got this mesh filter, which is removable, but not particularly easy. So I'm not going to take it out because I'll struggle to get it back in on camera. This mounting section here, if you want to, the mounting cage again for the hard drives is very, very flexible. You can actually, if you want to, mount the hard drive cage to the bottom rather than the top of the basement, and then you can have it on sliders. So if you have got water cooling in the front, you can move that around accordingly. Again, you've got these rubber grommets here, so you can attach a 3.5-inch drive directly to the frame and then remove the actual hard drive caddies or hard drive holders to give you that extra little bit of room. Another slight letdown is the feet, just plastic feet with small rubber bits, so not ideal. They would have been nice to be a little bit more sturdy, a little bit more substantial, but essentially they do the job and they do rise the case off the ground by about 1 inch, so it will improve airflow going into that power supply. Okay, so there you have it. That has been the Sharkoon TG5 Pro. What do you think about it? I've got my reservations about some of the design choices in this particular case. Being that it's a revamped older model, then I could totally understand some of the choices made. Obviously, this is a design which is in-house. They've had it, they've just updated it for the more modern generation. It would have been nice to have seen an option on this front panel to have a mesh front. Maybe that's something they can work on as time goes on. I am seriously considering taking that glass out. I've looked at it already. It looks like it's bonded on really well with adhesive all the way around this outside edge. So maybe not quite as simple as I first thought, but maybe we'll give that a go. But overall, I think it's a really nice design. The actual looks of it, the build quality is exceptional. I've got no qualms there with build quality. It's pretty much got everything you would want from a MIDI tower case. Style, looks, stability, lots of room inside. And actually, something I didn't mention is the instruction manual. The instruction manual is absolutely excellent. It goes through everything in depth. You've got all the options for the hard drive mounting areas, and also tells you about the RGB and all that kind of stuff. So if you've got any sort of issues at all, pretty much everything is covered in the user manual, which is always good to see. Some of these other cheaper cases on the market, or even some of the higher end ones, come with pretty awful manuals and you haven't got a clue what goes where. So the user manual is going to be your friend in this particular case. So like I've already said, a couple of minor things which are slightly troubling to me at the moment, but again, until we've done a full build on this, it's difficult to actually say 100% categorically whether it's good, bad or indifferent. So do join us for the build, which will be coming up very shortly on Mike's Unboxing channel. Also coming up very shortly is our build and a review of the Rev 220, the 90-degree twisted inverted chassis thing. So do say subscribe for that, and we'll be releasing that very shortly, and we'll see how that one does. But back to this one, the TG5 Pro. Yeah, I think it's pretty decent, not a bad case at all. And again, for around about £70–75 here in the UK, there's other options available, but I think this is a pretty decent one and worth a look. So I've been Mike, this is Mike's Unboxing Reviews and How To, and hopefully we'll catch you in the very next video. Thanks for watching.